On the night of September 8, 1973, the Brooklyn Academy of Music turned into the epicenter of the bodybuilding world. This wasn't just another date on the sports calendar, it was the ninth edition of Mr. Olympia, already gaining legendary status. New York City, with all its cultural energy and diversity, was chosen to host the best physiques on the planet. And the crowd wasn't there just to watch a contest. They were there to experience a full-on spectacle mixing strength, aesthetics, and pure emotion. The venue choice was no accident. The Brooklyn Academy of Music, already famous for hosting high-profile artistic events, offered the perfect atmosphere to give Olympia the prestige it was chasing. Just picture the impact. A classic theater, normally home to operas and symphonies, now filled with sculpted muscles and die-hard fans. That contrast between refined elegance and raw intensity gave the event a cinematic vibe, signaling that bodybuilding was breaking away from the margins to become a cultural spectacle in its own right. Another huge point was the championship's return to the US after previous editions in Europe. That move symbolized not only bodybuilding's global growth, but also the dominance the United States already had in the sport. New York was the world stage in so many arenas: music, fashion, politics, and now bodybuilding too. Hosting Olympia, there wasn't just about competition. It was a bold statement that the sport had earned its place in the heart of American culture. The night's format pushed that sense of grandeur even further. It wasn't just Mr. Olympia up for grabs. The audience also got to see the Mr. America and Mr. World competitions. It felt like a full-on festival, with athletes from across the globe meeting on one stage. For fans in the seats, it was a marathon of muscle, sweat, and history being written in real time. Every title awarded, every pose hit, carried the weight of a new era being born for bodybuilding. Now imagine the atmosphere inside that theater. Thousands of people, fans, first-timers, journalists, holding their breath for each competitor to walk out. Some came to cheer for their heroes. Others just wanted to witness what they'd only seen in glossy muscle mags. It was a mix of excitement and anticipation, like every camera flash and every round of applause was helping carve a moment that would live forever in the sport's history. That festival vibe also revealed the Weider brothers and the IFBB's vision. Bodybuilding wasn't supposed to be just about physiques, but about delivering an experience. They wanted entertainment, inspiration, a full-blown show. And that's exactly what Olympia 73 pulled off. A night that already carried the aura of being unforgettable. And here's the kicker. Can you picture yourself in that audience, in the vibrant New York of the 70s, seeing in real-life athletes you'd only known through photos? Feeling the energy of the crowd, sensing history unfolding right in front of you? That's the kind of moment that doesn't just define careers, it creates legends. The 1973 Olympia wasn't just another contest. It marked the beginning of a chapter that would forever change the relationship between bodybuilding and pop culture. But for all the grandeur, one detail stood out and even caused some discomfort: the prize money. In 1972, the Olympia champ had taken home $1,000. In 1973, that number dropped to just $750. Sure, to the audience it might have been just a figure, but for athletes dedicating their lives to the sport, that cut meant way more than a simple pay reduction. Arnold Schwarzenegger, the night's champion, made sure the issue didn't go unnoticed. Right after receiving his trophy and check, he publicly called out the decrease in prize money. His words rang like an alarm. How could the biggest title in bodybuilding pay less at the very moment the sport was gaining visibility? Arnold's blunt honesty showed that even the sport's biggest icons weren't immune to the struggles of trying to make a living in bodybuilding. That moment made something clear that insiders already knew. Back then, bodybuilding was still far from being a financially stable career. Unlike more mainstream sports, where sponsorships and prize money could guarantee comfort, bodybuilders in the 70s were stuck with intense training, expensive diets, and little financial return. Olympia might have been the most coveted stage in the world, but it still didn't offer the kind of security its athletes deserved. The prize cut also raised tough questions about the event's organization. Why slash the payout instead of increasing it? Was it a lack of financial backing? Or did the promoters still not fully believe in bodybuilding's commercial potential? Those doubts hung in the air, reminding everyone that behind the bright lights there were still plenty of growing pains. For the competitors, though, motivation went far beyond money. It was about glory, recognition, and the chance to etch their names in history as champions on the biggest stage of all. That's what drove legends like Arnold, Franco Columbu, and Serge Nubret to sacrifice so much. Still, the frustration was undeniable, seeing the sport they loved treated as less than when it came to financial value. Interestingly, that little detail about the prize money ended up becoming a metaphor for bodybuilding itself in the 1970s, a sport on the rise, dazzling under the stage lights, but still fighting for respect and real investment behind the scenes. Olympia was the showcase, but it also exposed the cracks and limitations of a discipline that dreamed of being recognized as a legitimate profession. Still, no matter what, the show had to go on. And when the stage lights came up and the judges called the results, there were no major surprises about the champion. Arnold Schwarzenegger, representing Austria, claimed his fourth straight Mr. Olympia title, cementing himself even further as the man to beat. His presence on stage was magnetic, and despite criticism or questions, nobody could deny it. He was the face of bodybuilding worldwide. Second place went to Franco Columbu, the short giant from Italy. Standing just 5 feet 5 inches, 1.65 meters, Franco made up for his height with jaw-dropping muscle density. His wide back, raw strength, and sharp conditioning made him both respected and feared as a competitor. In 1973, his performance was so strong that many believed the gap between him and Arnold was closing fast. It felt like Olympia was starting to prepare the audience for a possible change of throne. In third came France's Serge Nubret, who absolutely captivated the crowd with a physique many described as a work of art. Known as the Black Panther, Serge brought classical lines, a tiny waist, and proportions that screamed aesthetics and harmony. His weak points, though, were his legs and back development, which cost him in the rankings. Still, his elegance and charisma left a lasting impression that night. The 1973 podium perfectly summed up three distinct faces of bodybuilding at the time. Arnold was the symbol of total dominance, size paired with charisma. Franco stood for brute force and overcoming physical limits, proving height wasn't a barrier to greatness. And Serge embodied artistry, reminding everyone that bodybuilding was also about beauty, proportion, and visual impact. The absence of Sergio Oliva, who was barred by the organization, only put more spotlight on these three men. Without the Cuban myth in the lineup, Arnold's path was clearer, but that didn't dull his victory. If anything, it showed that even without his greatest rival, Arnold still had to earn every cheer and every point from the judges. For the fans in the audience, seeing Arnold, Franco, and Serge on stage together was unforgettable. The intensity of the poses, the clash of styles, and the thunder of applause proved Olympia had become way more than a competition. It was a global celebration, with each athlete adding his own unique flavor to the show. And here's something to think about. Which of those three styles do you admire most? The sheer dominance of Arnold, Franco's grit and determination, or Serge Nubret's refined aesthetics? In 1973, Olympia didn't just crown a champion. It gave the world three different visions of what it meant to be a legendary bodybuilder. And as mentioned before, if one element defined the '73 Olympia just as much as Arnold's win, it was the absence of his greatest rival, Sergio Oliva, the three-time champ known as the Myth. Sergio had signed up to compete, but the IFBB banned him, a decision that sparked fiery debates and raised suspicions of behind-the-scenes manipulation. His absence didn't just change the balance of the contest. It left fans with a nagging feeling that something was being kept from them. The official justification for the ban was Sergio's participation in the 1972 Mr. Galaxy, an event under rival federation WBBG, led by Dan Lurie. According to the IFBB, that violated their sanctioned events-only policy, which was designed to keep athletes from competing in other federations. The problem, though, was timing. The violation was in 1972, but the punishment came only in 1973. Why wait so long to ban him if the rule-breaking was already known? And this wasn't the first time Sergio was sidelined over politics. Back in 1971, he'd also been banned for competing at NABA's Mr. Universe, another rival federation. This repeat pattern only fueled suspicions that something personal was going on. Many believed Sergio was seen as too much of a threat to Arnold, and that the IFBB, under Joe Weider's command, was using the rulebook as a weapon to weaken him. Conspiracy theories quickly gained traction. Was Joe Weider really trying to protect Arnold from a possible defeat? For some fans and analysts back then, the answer was obvious: yes. Joe saw Arnold as the perfect face for bodybuilding's future, a charismatic young Austrian who could bring the sport to the mainstream. Sergio, on the other hand, with his rebellious, outspoken attitude, was a threat to that marketing plan. And then there was the famous Tijuana incident, which became part of bodybuilding folklore. At a show in Mexico, Sergio reportedly challenged Arnold on stage, demanding a direct showdown. Arnold, following Weider's advice, refused. Instead, Franco Columbu stepped up, and the face-off ended in a declared tie by the organizer. Not long after, Sergio's exclusion from the Olympia was confirmed, and many saw that episode as the final straw that sealed his downfall in 1973. For fans, Oliva's absence felt like a gut punch. The rivalry between Arnold and Sergio was what made Olympia electric. Without the Cuban on stage, the air of unpredictability was gone. That sense that anything could happen simply vanished. People wanted to see two titans clash, but instead, they only got half the battle. And here's a question worth asking. Where's the line between rules protecting the integrity of a sport and those same rules being twisted into tools of manipulation? The 1973 Olympia forced that question into the open, showing that behind the bright lights, there was a political game just as intense as the battles waged under the spotlight. For years, the Arnold-Sergio rivalry had been the fuel that kept Olympia running hot. Ever since Larry Scott's era ended, the throne was fought over by the Austrian and the Cuban, two athletes with opposite but equally legendary styles. Arnold represented charisma, symmetry, and stage strategy. Sergio was raw power, jaw-dropping visuals, and freakish genetics. Every clash between them was its own show. Up until 1972, fans lived through this duel of titans, always with that sense of suspense. Arnold had edged out Sergio in earlier battles, but Oliva's shadow still loomed over him. It always felt like the myth could take the throne back at any moment. That rivalry gave bodybuilding the drama, the thrill, and the spice it needed. But 1973 changed everything. For the first time, Sergio wasn't on stage. Banned by the Federation, he couldn't go head-to-head with Arnold, and Olympia lost the showdown everyone had been waiting for. The fans, used to those direct comparisons, felt the void. There was no rivalry anymore, just the certainty that Arnold had a clear path to continue his reign. That absence marked the end of their direct rivalry. Arnold and Sergio would never again face off on the Olympia stage. What had been the greatest duel of bodybuilding's golden era ended without a true final chapter, leaving behind a sense of something unfinished. For many fans, that frustration became part of bodybuilding's mythology, the eternal what if that never got answered. With Sergio out of the way, Arnold reigned alone, without any real challengers at that moment. His fourth consecutive Olympia title in 1973 crowned him as the undisputed king. What had once been a fierce back and forth now turned into clear dominance, making Arnold's name practically synonymous with Mr. Olympia itself. He wasn't just another champion anymore. He had become the definitive face of bodybuilding. Still, the rivalry never stopped echoing outside the stage. Arguments about injustice, politics, and favoritism fueled debates for decades. To this day, many still believe Sergio was the one man who could have broken Arnold's streak. In a way, that narrative only added to both of their legacies. Arnold as the crowned king, Sergio as the eternal challenger, unjustly sidelined but forever mythical. And yet, even without Sergio, one point can't be overlooked. Many fans and experts point to 1973 as Arnold Schwarzenegger's physical peak. That Olympia revealed a version of Arnold that fans weren't used to seeing. Instead of the extreme bulk that would later define him, he walked out with a tighter, leaner physique, dense, detailed, and shockingly conditioned. For many, that was the night Arnold showed the most refined version of his entire career. What really grabbed everyone's attention in 1973 was Arnold's insane muscle separation, especially in his legs. Arnold had never been known for having standout thighs. But that year he shocked the crowd with cuts in detail that were almost unheard of in that decade. The audience was blown away, seeing definition that actually foreshadowed the direction bodybuilding would take in the years ahead. His physique was considered nothing short of revolutionary for the time. The extreme vascularity also stole the show. Veins popping across his arms and shoulders, visible with every contraction, gave him a look of raw hardness and muscle maturity rarely seen before. His presentation felt like his body had been sculpted not only for size, but for quality. Every detail seemed planned to reveal Arnold in his most shredded and refined form. Two poses in particular became iconic from that Olympia. In the most muscular, Arnold unleashed deeply striated pecs, paired with dense, veiny arms that had the crowd roaring. Then, in the front double biceps, he displayed perfect harmony between arms, chest, and legs, hitting a level of symmetry few thought possible in the early 70s. These images became timeless references for generations of bodybuilders to come. Looking across his career, 1973 stands out as something special. In 1971, Arnold showed a strong balance of size and definition, a mature look, but not quite as refined. In 1974, he came in bigger than ever, weighing around 250 pounds on stage, but sacrificed some conditioning in the process. But in 1973, fans got the rare chance to see the best of both worlds, a tighter, more detailed physique without losing the imposing size that made him king. That version of Arnold was also his direct response to critics. Many said he was just mass and charisma, but on that night he proved he could deliver next-level conditioning and detail too. It was like he told the world, "I'm not just big, I'm complete." That statement silenced the doubters and reinforced his aura of invincibility on stage. But the 1973 Olympia wasn't just about Arnold. As part of the festival-style format, fans also witnessed two other contests that rounded out the spectacle, Mr. America and Mr. World. These shows served as a launchpad for new talent and a chance for rising international stars to prove themselves. That September in New York, the spotlight didn't shine only on Arnold. It also revealed the future of bodybuilding. The 1973 Mr. America was one of the night's highlights, split into height classes. In the short class, Leon Brown took the win with a dense, well-conditioned physique. In the medium class, Bob Birdsong impressed with sharp proportions and crisp definition. But the big revelation came in the tall class, when a towering newcomer walked out and changed everything. At just 21 years old, Lou Ferrigno made his IFBB debut and completely dominated the stage. Standing 6 feet 5 inches, 1.95 meters, and weighing over 265 pounds, 120 kilograms, Lou was a physical marvel, massive size combined with commanding presence, unlike anything the sport had seen. He easily outclassed Leon Brown and Bob Birdsong in the overall, walking away with the Mr. America title. The audience was stunned. A literal giant had arrived. Ferrigno's victory that night marked the beginning of a legendary journey. Soon after, he would go head-to-head with Arnold himself and even share the spotlight with him in the iconic pumping iron. But in September 1973, Lou was just a young rookie, already proving he had what it took to challenge the sport's biggest names. The 1973 Mr. World also delivered heavyweight clashes. In the short class, Johnny Maldonado came out on top, showing impressive muscle density on a compact frame. In the medium class, the charismatic Ed Corney, master of posing, mesmerized the crowd with a flawless routine. In the tall class, the battle was fierce, but Ken Waller edged out the talented Dennis Tenorino and the always popular Bill Grant. In the overall decision, Ken Waller lived up to expectations, capturing the Mr. World title and cementing his spot among the greats of the era. His balanced symmetry and standout leg development sealed the deal with both the judges and the fans. Much like Ferrigno at Mr. America, Waller left his mark that night as a symbol of bodybuilding's growing international power. These side competitions made it clear that bodybuilding was exploding in popularity. While Arnold ruled Olympia, new stars like Lou Ferrigno and Ken Waller were stepping up to carry the torch forward. If the 1973 Olympia was already important because of Arnold's win, its relevance went far beyond the stage. This edition became the foundation for pumping iron, the book written by Charles Gaines and illustrated with George Butler's now iconic photos. Released in 1974, the book gave the general public an unprecedented look at the backstage world of bodybuilding, showing the lives, training, and emotions of athletes who, until then, had been known only within a niche. More than just a sports chronicle, Pumping Iron was treated as a cultural work. Gaines portrayed bodybuilders almost as body artists, while Butler's photos captured the drama of their poses and the grind behind them. This sophisticated perspective helped dismantle the stigma around the sport, often dismissed as nothing more than a muscle obsession. For the first time, bodybuilding had a respected literary and visual narrative. And the climax of that narrative was the 1973 Olympia. Arnold in his best ever shape, Franco lighting up the stage with charisma, and Serge Nubret showcasing aesthetic lines that looked sculpted by the gods, all immortalized in the pages of the book. What the audience saw in New York's theater that night was soon shared with the world through words and images, reaching people who had never even heard of Mr. Olympia. The success of the book paved the way for something even bigger, the Pumping Iron movie, released in 1977. More than a documentary, it became a cultural phenomenon, turning Arnold Schwarzenegger and Lou Ferrigno into global stars. But it all started in 1973, on that stage at the Brooklyn Academy of Music, where Butler and Gaines found the perfect raw material for their story. That connection made the 1973 Olympia not just a sporting milestone, but a cultural one. For the first time, bodybuilding wasn't just a spectacle for die-hard fans. It was speaking to the mainstream. Suddenly, gyms were filling up, young people wanted to train, and the idea of building your body was becoming aspirational rather than eccentric. It's wild to think that an event with only 3 competitors could have such a massive impact. But maybe that's the secret. More than the numbers, it was how this edition was recorded and immortalized that made it unforgettable. Without the 1973 Olympia, bodybuilding probably wouldn't have exploded in popularity at the end of the 70s. The 1973 Olympia is remembered as a true turning point in bodybuilding history. That night, Arnold Schwarzenegger didn't just win his 4th straight title. He broke Sergio Oliva's record and crowned himself as the new king of bodybuilding. His flawless performance and unmatched conditioning sealed the image of a man destined to take the sport to another level. At his side, Franco Columbu shined as runner-up, reinforcing his role as Arnold's inseparable partner and, at the same time, his natural heir. Small in stature but massive in density, Franco was living proof that size wasn't everything. His consistency and strength gave the audience confidence that his best days were still ahead. Then there was Serge Nubret, the aesthetic Frenchman known as the Black Panther. With his refined lines and artistic presence, he reminded the world that bodybuilding wasn't only about brute force, but also about proportion, harmony, and visual impact. He didn't win, but Serge reinforced his status as a style icon within the sport. On the other side of the story, even in absence, Sergio Oliva remained a central figure. Banned from competing, he held on to his aura as the wronged champion, the rebel against IFBB politics. For many fans, Olympia without the Cuban simply lacked some of its fire. Yet, this narrative only strengthened Sergio's legend, transforming him into a symbol of resistance amidst controversy. The 1973 event is remembered for 3 key milestones. It was the year we saw the most defined Arnold ever, the year the direct Arnold, Sergio rivalry came to an end, and, above all, the beginning of bodybuilding's cultural breakthrough, thanks to Pumping Iron, which would soon conquer the big screen. That was the moment bodybuilding started blending with pop culture, laying the groundwork to become a global phenomenon. This legacy isn't just about titles and trophies. It's about the transformation of bodybuilding itself. After 1973, the sport could never be seen the same way again. You couldn't ignore Arnold's influence, Franco's rise, Serge's aesthetic artistry, or Sergio's thunderous absence. Each of these pieces formed a mosaic that expanded Olympia's horizons and pulled it closer to a wider audience than ever before. So, did you enjoy reliving with me all the details of the legendary 1973 Olympia? That was the year Arnold Schwarzenegger cemented himself as the true king of bodybuilding, marked the end of a historic rivalry, and opened the sport's doors to pop culture with Pumping Iron. An edition packed with drama, controversy, and moments that changed history forever. If this video brought you value, you already know what to do. Hit that like button, because it really helps the channel reach more bodybuilding fans like us. And if you want to support us in a special way, consider becoming a channel member. You'll help us keep producing epic content like this and also get access to exclusive material. Now I want to hear from you. In your eyes, what was the greatest legacy of the 1973 Olympia? Was it Arnold at his most defined, Sergio Oliva's controversial absence, or bodybuilding's official breakthrough into pop culture? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read everything, and your participation makes all the difference. And hey, if you're not subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that button and turn on the notification bell. That way you won't miss any episode of our Timeline series, where we're walking step by step through the history of the biggest championships and athletes in bodybuilding. And of course, it doesn't stop here. On the end screen, you'll see another special video from the channel. Click it and keep this journey going, because every edition of Olympia has its own secrets, drama, and incredible characters that deserve to be remembered. So that's it, my friends. Like, subscribe, comment, and join in. Together, we're building a community that keeps the memory of this amazing sport alive. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter of this legendary saga.